Hi, welcome back to In Between. This is a place where I tell the truth about living between worlds, between illness and spirit, between what I survived and who I'm becoming. Today, I'm stepping into one of those stories, the one about my mother, of all the things. Yeah, we're going there. And the way toxic family dynamics tend to shape us long before we realize what's happening. Today, I like to talk about a realization that changed everything for me. It's about the way that manipulation can mimic truth so closely that you start doubting your own reality. And how, of all the things, dialysis treatment forged me into someone who can finally see the difference. Because for years, I thought we were both exhausted by our relationship, speaking on the terms of me and my mom. I thought we were both hurting. I thought if I held the space enough for her, if I understood why she was tired, then maybe our relationship would mend. But that was only a thought. The thought that we were both trying. But that was never true. However, the moment it clicked for me was very quiet, not dramatic, not explosive as she was, just clear. I realized I was exhausted from maintaining a life. She was mimicking the language of a victim. She was exhausted from maintaining a lie. She was copying my words, my tone, and my emotional vocabulary. Not because she felt it in some sort of way, right? But because it protected her. And for so long, I thought I was creating a double standard. I thought, if if she's tired, and I say I'm tired, maybe we're both the problem. That wasn't the case. And that's exactly how manipulation works. It creates a false symmetry. It makes you question your own reality. It attempts to make you feel guilty for seeing the truth. Here's the difference I finally had to name. Her exhaustion is a strategy, a shield, a way to manipulate the rest of the family and hide her behavior. My exhaustion is real because I poured all of me, all of me, everything I had into trying to repair a relationship she refuses to fix. I'm the one fighting for my help, for my life. I'm the one navigating dialysis, kidney failure, and the emotional weight of chronic illness. I'm the one doing the work, and she was the one avoiding it. She was the one covering it up. One is the cover up, and the other is a reality. And here's the part that's hard to say. And it may be hard for many of us to say. But very necessary. Okay? People love to point to addiction as the reason that everything falls apart. At least that's what people did in my family. Oh, it's because of, the drugs. You know, it's because of the menopause. And you can be addicted to narrations, right? Stories that you make up for sympathy, to be the victim. And that's exactly what she did. Well, she wasn't herself, or the drugs changed her. But before the truth was what she said it to be, The truth is, she was already abusive long before the drugs. She was already turning my brothers and my dad against me, already planting seeds of separation. She was creating distance between me and the rest of the family. I remember why my dad left the house for a year back in 2023. Him telling me why, and mainly it being because of the incident my mom had had a year prior in 2022, where my safety was compromised and pure resentment and hatred was in her eyes towards me. She crossed a line that couldn't be crossed or uncrossed, shouldn't have been crossed. He made his exit. I mean, that was the excuse. I'm sure there was other things. At least there was things that he entrusted me with. As to the reason why he couldn't be in the house anymore. During that year, I spent my time trying to hold her emotionally, also while trying to maintain my own relationship with somebody I was dating in that time, who actually reminded my mom and me a lot of my dad. And that wasn't intentional, but it was very spiritual, the way it kind of moved out in that year. I spent time praying with her, praying for her, doing ceremony, trying to make sure that she ate balanced foods because all she would want to eat was eggs or cake, or eggs and tortillas. Hardly any substantial, nutrient dense meals. Now, we came to a point where I really was convinced that we were finally healing our relationship. Because I'm not going to go into too much detail just now about what happened that year, but there came a peak moment where, I thought we were finally just healing together. Until I found out years later, in that same year, late in 2025 now, that she went to my aunt, her sister, and lied on my name. Here I was, pouring myself into supporting her, and she was rewriting the story to make me the villain, her daughter. That's the part people don't see. And that's the big family secret that I'm done keeping a secret, even if it's through here. The part that gets erased, this is the part that gets replaced with excuses. The drugs didn't create the cruelty here, they just made it impossible to hide. And how the story was told. I know my brothers blamed me for it. They blamed my dad for it, for leaving, and how it was made that I couldn't defend myself. Because this was already preparations, and before the whole happening, before my dad leaving, the manipulation was already there. I have no contact with my brothers or my dad. And is it even a question if I still want to talk to my mom after everything? I haven't spoken with her too. I haven't spoken to my parents nearing gonna be 2 years now. And this silence has taught me more about peace than their presence ever did. And here's the deeper truth. My mother struggles with abandonment issues. I've known that. Okay. But going back, tracing back into the knowing, just because you know something about somebody and you understand doesn't mean their behavior towards you is acceptable. And there has been many times where I have created bridges and offered, you know, ways to move through it that were not in my control anymore, that were up to the creator to guide her in which steps she wanted to take. And she never took any of the steps to actually mend our relationship. And never took the steps of ceasing to exist in that victim complex. Her own biological father left her when she was a child. That wound shaped her. It shaped her fears. It shaped her behavior. She wanted my dad for herself, and she wanted my brothers for herself. She never wanted us to have a relationship because she would have never done what she had done. She wanted their loyalty, their closeness, their affection, but she neglected me. She abused me. She separated me from a family long before addiction ever entered the picture. Now, this is the incident that made me leave. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it reached a point where I couldn't stay anymore. She repeated the same abusive pattern once my dad was already back in the house. The same behavior that had driven my dad supposedly out of the house from before. Even this time around, she hit my dialysis arm, my lifeline, the arm that keeps me alive, the arm that had already endured more pain than most people could ever understand. And even my dog Avery was not safe. I was already in preparation to move out. I was in a slow move, ready to move out to Dallas. I had boxes near packed already, just months prior. And I moved out early because I no longer felt safe. It was a rush move. And my dad turned against me. He had returned and he chose my mother's side. And staying meant risking my life at that point. And this is what I mean by the spiritual forging of dialysis and why the Creator had me go through what I did. This is where dialysis enters the story, not simply as a medical detail, but as a spiritual one. Dialysis taught me devotion, what it looks like, the kind that shows up 3 times a week, no matter how you feel. This entails a difference between her exhaustion and mine. Chronic illness changes you. Dialysis changes you. Facing your own body's capacities changes you. And we need to stop normalizing just because we're going through something, in the sense that it's every excuse to be manipulative, to be bitter, to be disrespectful, or abusive. I'm not willing to carry lies. And it makes you unwilling to participate in performances. But let me close it off with this. This episode isn't about blame, it's about clarity. And this is about recognizing the healing in walking away from the people who are never going to meet you in truth. And you know what? That's what God is. And that's what God has specific war angels for, to entice that truth. And I remember even just, and I'm going to close it off with this. I remember the day that I declared the move, before I actually physically set foot. I prayed so loud in my room. I closed out the door. I lit my candles, and I prayed so hard to the Creator. And I know that there was an angelic covering in that room. That may have not been on the rest of the outside of the perimeter of that house, but in that room it became sanctified. And I could hear my mom and dad laughing in the other side of the room, and just proclaiming how ridiculous I was being. And I knew my prayer was hitting and creating the biggest shield, because even as I was praying, my mother was slamming shit around the house, throwing stuff around. And I remember Avery looking at me, and she gave me the deepest stare I've ever seen. And I knew in that moment, nobody could perpetrate the sanctity of prayer and protection that I had, not just in the physical room, but in the prayer that I was setting. And since then, I understood healing and walking away from the people who are never going to meet you in truth. You're okay to stand where you are now in that. Until next time, take care.